Welcome to CMO Confidential, the podcast that takes you inside the drama, decisions, and choices that go with being the head of marketing. Hosted by five-time CMO Mike Linton.
When is the last time you researched something on a website? If you're like most people, AI did that work for you. And that raises a question. If AI is doing the work, what is your website really for? This behavioral shift means AI bots are becoming your most important new visitors, a challenge our sponsor Scrunch is taking head on. Scrunch is the customer experience platform that helps you understand how AI agents experience your site, when and why they show up, and what's blocking them from being retrieved, trusted, or recommended. Scrunch shows you the content and citation gaps and technical blockers and helps you fix them so your brand shows up when consumers start with AI, because your most important site visitor might not be a human. For our listeners, Scrunch is providing a free website audit that uncovers how AI sees your site and how you're showing up in AI versus the competition. Run your site through it at scrunch.com/CMO. Welcome marketers, advertisers, and those who love them to Chief Marketing Officer Confidential. CMO Confidential is a program that takes you inside the drama, the decisions, and the politics that go with being the head of marketing at any company in what is one of the most scrutinized jobs in the executive suite. I'm Mike Linton, the former Chief Marketing Officer of Best Buy, eBay, Farmers Insurance, and Ancestry.com, here today with my guest, Richard Sanderson. Today's topic: the Spencer Stuart CMO survey, marketers in the messy middle. Now, Richard began his career at Russell Reynolds and Booz and Company and moved to Spencer Stuart, where he leads the marketing, communications, and sales practice. He heads approximately 25 searches per year for the CMO, CRO, CCO, and sales leadership positions. This is Richard's fifth time on the show in our more than 3-year run, and we consider him a CMO Confidential OG. Full disclosure, we've known each other for quite a while, as Richard recruited me to the Allworth Financial Board. Welcome back, Richard.
Thank you, Mike. Fifth time. Do I get a cut of the advertising revenue anytime soon?
Yeah, we'll send you a check for 4 cents.
Wonderful. Thank you. You know where to find me.
Yeah. Hey, so Richard, we're covering 2 studies here: the annual CMO survey that Spencer has done for a long time, and a CMO survey that you guys did proprietary on AI, right?
Yeah, that's right. So thank you for giving us the opportunity. You're right. So Spencer Stuart has conducted a survey of CMO tenure now for something like 25, 26 years. It's probably the longest data set of sort of longitudinal insights into CMO tenure. It was started by my great friend and colleague, Greg Welch, many years ago, and I've stepped into the breach and continue to run it this year. And we've just published in the last week or so the latest results. And additionally, at the end of last year, Mike, we wanted to try and separate the signal from the noise around what exactly is going on with AI and marketing. Not so much looking at marketing technology, but perhaps my sense is some of the less spoken about topics around AI and marketing, which is what is it going to do to talent and teams? And it feels like every week now in the Wall Street Journal or some other publication of choice, there seems to be some headline about 1,000 job cuts here, 10,000 job cuts there. Some of it is associated with AI, some of it is not. But what actually is going on, and what decisions and headcount changes, amongst other things, do we expect marketing leaders to make? So we went ahead and conducted a survey there of 100 marketing officers and got some interesting results back on that. So 2 for the price of 1 this time, Mike.
Well, I feel like it's a buy one, get one. So let's start with the state of the CMO, the study you've done for 20 plus years. In the overview, you titled this study, Shorter Tenures, Brighter Futures. Yep. Give us the overview of the CMO study and what has changed, if much, over the last year.
Right. So just to set the baseline for your listeners and your viewers, Mike, we look at the S&P 500. So that is basically the largest 500 companies by market capitalization. we look at the chief marketing officer or the most similar role to that. And then essentially we're looking at all the features associated with when that person was hired, how long have they been in the role, where did they come from, insider, outsider, were they from the industry, outside of the industry, all the bits and pieces. Here's the headline. First of all, I think it always surprises people, but roughly about a third of the S&P 500 companies do not even have a chief marketing officer. That's, I think, to me, actually quite unusual. Compare that to, I think, 0% of companies that don't have
nobody
a chief
has no
financial officer.
CFO.
Right. But a full third do not have an enterprise level marketing officer. The average S&P 500 tenure this year is about 4.1 years. That is actually remarkably stable. I mean, since COVID, we have now seen that number hover in the 4.1 to 4.3 year range pretty consistently.
So this is remarkable too, because that is against a lot of the common news you hear about CMOs getting, cut left and right, right?
And that's, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this, because for years, I think there's this backstory of rumors, hypothesis, conjecture, but surprisingly little data. Here's what is true, though, Mike. At 4.1 years, that is below the average of the C-suite. In fact, it is the lowest average tenure of all the C-suite officers. To be clear, the average for all C-suite roles at these same companies is about 5.0 years.
Oh, so that's almost a 25% jump. So
yeah, it is a year. It is a year, or approximately a year less. And so, the short tenure may seem like an indication of a revolving door for marketing leaders, Mike. But in our analysis, we actually find the opposite to be true. And indeed, what we have done is actually track the exits of all the CMOs who left their roles between 2021 and 2025. And what we're finding is it's about 62%, so almost 2/3. The reality is they are either promoted at their company or they went on to a similar or bigger role at another company. And so I think the mistake that historically people have made is to associate short tenure with failure. That is not the case. Indeed, what we're finding here is that the majority of CMOs, when they exit, are being promoted into either bigger or better roles. And so short tenure should not be a signal of failure.
And some of these roles, I want to go back to the third of companies don't have a CMO, which I think is pretty consistent with last year's study, or roughly close. But a lot of these jobs is the CMO job evolving to be experience, revenue, super CMO kind of gigs. Yep. Is that right?
It is. Look, we do find some difference across industries. So, for example, just 56% of healthcare companies have a chief marketing officer. Just 53% of industrial companies have a chief marketing officer. On the other hand, in financial services, that percentage, for example, is much higher. Some of it, I think, is related to regulatory constraints, or just simply marketing in some industry verticals, Mike, is more of a support function than it is a commercial or revenue influencing function. So
you mean like in industrials where I'm Bechtel or I'm somebody like doing a lot of infrastructure stuff, I am supporting the sales team or the biz dev team. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, companies like, here's an example. Off the top of my head, I seem to recall a company like Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin. Neither of those two companies have chief marketing officers. Whilst I don't know what their customer base looks like, I would imagine a lot of it is the government.
A lot of it's probably one big customer sitting at the Pentagon. Yes.
Right. And so, there are situations like that. That's where I think a chief marketing officer reporting to a CEO, part of a C-suite, probably has lower value than I think in other industries or businesses where the CMO is directly influencing revenue. So there's point number one, which is about prevalence of the role by industry. But your other point is right, which is, and we've spoken about this before, which is this concept of a CMO-Plus role. So in the hospitality industry, for example, many companies have moved to a chief commercial officer responsible for sales and marketing. A big trend we've seen in the last couple of years has been in software companies that have moved to a chief revenue officer style role. And many retail companies now are just as likely to have a chief customer officer who oversees not only the traditional remit of a CMO, so some of the brand, creative, media, insights, analytics, but also a lot of the omni-channel activation, retail design, assortment, and for some, even the in-store experience. So yes, it is true that, and this is not a new phenomenon, but the evolution of the role has continued to grow over the last 5 years.
And you said in the study that more companies are hiring from within than previously. What's driving that? And tell us about it.
Yeah, so look, we have found 62% of chief marketing officers of the S&P 500 that we discussed were appointed from within. You know, the inverse of that, you can say 38% are hired externally. And of those that have been hired externally, 27% of them actually have held a CMO role before. Again, we did find some different patterns across industry, but I think the message here is that there was a feeling that if you wanted to be a CMO, you had to make a move.
Yeah, now you had, it was easier. It was like the NFL coaching job. It's easier to be
correct.
an offensive coordinator somewhere and get hired than it is to get promoted.
Right. So at least if you look at this data set, and I accept this is the larger company market cap, this does not include a lot of the private equity, privately held businesses. It doesn't include small, early stage businesses, but certainly these larger, more mature businesses, the reality is you're more likely to be appointed from within. And so what we're finding here is that companies, you know, many, but not all, are doing a much better job around succession planning. If you are a chief
this is a major shift over if you go back 20 years, right?
Well, I think it is, yes. I mean, there is some assumption that, to your point, it was a little bit more like football coaches. You had to move to get the top job. I actually think there has historically actually been a little bit of a crisis actually around succession planning. My biggest concern is that the marketing function has become a series of highly specialized sub-capabilities and often challenge a chief marketing officer. When was the last time you put your creative director to be your head of performance marketing, or vice versa, for example? I mean, it actually very rarely happens. And now, of course, we're seeing specialized roles around your VP marketing technology, experience roles crop up. I mean, it has become, the marketing skill set has become a really broad and diverse church. And yet we are seeing some marketing leaders. I think what we're actually seeing is the ones that really do step up, Mike, are the ones who are in what I would say the divisional, business unit, or geographic marketing leadership roles.
Where they got a wider remit.
Correct.
So they have my whole career building a brand or doing performance marketing or CRM, and it's harder to make that leap. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what we are seeing, the greatest likelihood of an internal promotion are those that have held the full scope of CMO role, but maybe at a smaller scale. So specifically, as I said, they might be in a geographical business unit. They might be, I don't know, the CMO for Europe or some region, or they may be the chief marketing officer of a business line. I mean, a great example would be, I mean, I'll just pick on one example. I mean, JP Morgan Chase, you have obviously, as people well know, Carla Hassan in the enterprise leadership role, but there's really 9 or so business unit chief marketing officers under her who they generally speaking have different scopes, but broadly speaking have full funnel remit within their business units. They are effectively mini CMOs and could easily be plucked off and sit in an enterprise role at another organization. Some of the business.
Well, there are many CMOs over really big businesses too.
Correct. And so that's where we do see this promotion. And that's why, as I said, I am sensitive. This data set is skewed slightly towards larger or higher market cap companies, but certainly amongst that group, we are seeing a much better job of succession planning and grooming the next generation of marketing leaders to step into the top C-suite enterprise level role.
Speaking of that, let's flip to the second study, which is marketers see 2026 as a make or break year for AI, according to your study. Share the dynamics at play there. What are you hearing from your study?
Yeah. So this comes back to where we started, Mike, which is we had wanted, again, there's been a lot of conjecture and hypothesis around, so what exactly is AI going to do? And through our lens at Spencer Stuart, we're obviously most interested in it from a leadership, teams, and talent perspective.
Yeah.
And I think we're all seeing headlines every day about various job losses. Some of it may or may not be associated with AI. There is a sense there is a moment of reckoning coming. And so we actually asked 100 CMOs that participated in our survey, you know, what exactly do you expect to happen? And so here's where we are. I mean, there's a sense of when we ask them, you know, how many of you have actually reduced headcount in the last 12 to 24 months? The answer was not many. Only 17% have actually cut jobs directly as a result of AI in the last 12 to 24 months. However, when we ask them, well, what about the next 12 to 24 months? Then it looks very different. 36% of chief marketing officers tell us they expect reductions in headcount in the next 12 to 24 months as a direct result of AI. It's the content production and likely agency-facing roles that are most vulnerable. When we cut the data across industry, we try to see where are there differences.
Yeah.
Are there differences across industry? Are there differences across holding structure? So in other words, public versus private versus non-profit. In fact, the only statistically significant dimension which we could find difference was actually amongst size. And this is actually the really important point. There is significant pressure to reduce costs for the largest companies.
Yeah.
The definition of large here is revenue greater than $20 billion. That's approximately, if you were to equate that back to our S&P 500, it's roughly the top 200 or the top 250 companies in terms of market cap or revenue. Now there, some of the numbers were quite staggering. At that point, 37% of CMOs in those companies told us that their CEOs or CFOs are essentially giving them what's called efficiency targets of at least 20% over the next 12 to 24 months. That is significant.
20% is a lot.
20%, because if you think about, I mean, the size of these marketing teams for companies.
Well, if I have a 1,000-person team,
right, and
says,
some of the
I got to
largest
find
companies,
200 heads in that, and $1 billion budget says I have to find 200 million.
Let's take a short break for a word from our sponsor, Scrunch.
Over the weekend, I asked AI to do dozens of things for me. Please help me make this dishwasher start working. Settle a debate between me and my partner. Is it safe to sleep at 80 degrees? It's not. Please help me find a robotics kit for a 5-year-old operating at a middle school level. And even help me compare the Scrunch Agent Experience platform with Adobe's LLM Optimizer. In every one of these interactions, I never once visited a website. In this day and age, what's your website actually for? The truth is, almost everything on your website is now for AI consumption. The Scrunch Agent Experience platform helps manage, optimize, and deliver content directly for AI to retrieve.
Now back to our discussion with Richard Sanderson.
That's right. So, some of the headlines here were around, headcount. I know that's what captures people's attention, but it was clear that in small or mid-sized companies, the story is really about redeployment, upskilling. There is significant benefits to workflow shifts rather than true business model shifts. However, for the large companies, the cost savings and efficiency gains expectations are significant, and they're coming now. There's a sense we heard from chief marketing officers, or certainly the feeling or the sentiment they're getting from their CEO or CFO that, look, guys, you've had 2 years to do all your pilots. Now it's show us the money.
Well, and we've done a couple shows with agencies where the pressure on agencies to do this is enormous. And then we did a venture cap show with a gentleman named Rob Ward, who basically said the real tip of the iceberg here on the cutting is just getting underway. A lot of this was kind of just the beginning.
Correct.
And so we got a lot of points on here. And so you, in the study, you said CMOs, they think they're in the messy middle.
Yes.
And tell me why is it so messy? And is it more messy in marketing than other places in the company?
Well, so let me answer that. So there's two parts there. There's, what's going on with marketing. And then I think you're asking a broader comparative question with, how else is AI impacting other parts of the enterprise? Let me pick the marketing piece of that first, Mike, and just touch on that.
Okay.
We had asked them simple questions around, do you see yourself as a laggard or as a leader? The answer is very few saw themselves at the edges, and most were clustering in the middle. In fact, 51% of CMOs, perhaps not surprisingly, think they are around average.
It's like a Lake Wobegon study.
Right. I think we went a little bit further around. So, where exactly is your marketing team on the AI adoption journey. Again, we gave, an option of 5 answers. On the one hand, those where they're just, individual team members are just doing some individual uncoordinated experimentation. Hardly anyone said there. We also asked, the other end of the spectrum, how many of you are in fully transformed AI native marketing organizations? And again, actually 0% answered that. So no one thinks they're at either ends of this. The vast majority tell us they're either piloting projects in some functional areas, or they're beginning to scale proven use cases across multiple teams.
Hey, so Richard, is this like, is everyone playing on a muddy field here and the marketer is just one of the most visible players, or is marketing really more unique in this AI space?
No, it does appear that I think marketing is in the middle of this maelstrom, Mike. I mean, we also asked marketing leaders, within your company, who actually is taking the lead on AI strategy and implementation? I mean, who is the spotlight on? Interestingly, perhaps not surprisingly, in most companies, it's actually the chief information or the chief technology officer that is driving initiatives, but the CMO is number 2, right behind it. So if your CIO isn't doing it, there's an expectation that marketing is.
And is that because you have this giant, that both those groups have huge line items at these companies? Like, you're just sitting on ginormous line items and that's where the cost will go? Or is it really more first principles? This is where we have to re-engineer everything.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think there is a sense of course, many marketers more in consumer-related industries are sitting on sizable budgets. I mean, we've just seen in the recent Super Bowl, for example, I think there was even a stat that was published in the Wall Street Journal. I think that 23% of ads are now AI influenced. I mean, it is coming, and it is coming now. And there is this sense which you're hearing from your agency partners, the squeeze is coming, and it's coming to marketing. Look, I'm sure there are significant savings to be had in in the information and technology, depending the teams you're in. Clearly, there's a lot of threat to software businesses. The entire software valuation.
The valuation got hammered
in 2026, purely by, I think it was Anthropic releasing a small add-on that happens to help in the legal industry. Within 24 hours, you see valuations of the entire software industry collapse. I mean, there is a real sense that people are on edge, Mike, and this is the moment in 2026 where it goes from talk to the expectation of reality is coming true now.
So let's talk about the downstream effects of that, because the CMO's in the messy middle for a whole bunch of reasons. When you look down in the orgs for the future, leaders of marketing or chief revenue officers or chief customer officers, what's this all going to do to career development and experience if everyone's shrinking budgets and people?
Yep. So great question. I would say it's been noticeable, Mike, over the last 2 years. I feel my colleagues, and I'm sure this is true for other search and leadership advisory firms, we are having more fundamental discussions about, essentially what I call the 4 S's: strategy, structure, scope, and skills. There's more fundamental discussion around, are we organized the right way? Is it supporting the strategy the way it should? Have we scoped the roles the right way? And do we actually have the skills we need to fulfill those scope mandates? These are much more fundamental first principle discussions I think marketing leaders, chief HR officers, talent leaders are having now. And I think it is being driven by AI. I mean, there is a sense that many job descriptions are being written for more AI first. There is a sense of moving from, I think, doing to orchestrating. I'm certainly seeing language now in position descriptions around designing prompts, supervising agents. I'm talking about AI agents here, to be clear, owning performance outcomes and building fluency in data hygiene. Or what's the experimentation design? What are the AI related KPIs? I mean, it is clear some of these roles now, I think, are being redesigned and rescoped and reskilled for a more AI centric future. We are seeing that now.
And if I'm sitting here at the manager or the director level, and I'm going to flip this over and say, you're looking at all these people, are they going to be getting the same training needed? I can make a case that when I just take everything apart that you just said, you're going to have a lot less really good talent in the pool because of specialization, shrinking budgets, shrinking heads, and less training. Is that a fair assessment or not? If I look 10 years out.
It could be. I think honestly, our sense is, I don't want to say people are making it up as they go along, but there is clearly a lot of a change coming. I mean, we were through this survey, we asked marketing leaders either what roles have you created or retired as a result of AI adoption? How are you transforming your existing teams and the culture to be ready? What are you doing around investing in upskilling, embedding AI into workflows? And importantly, how do you foster a culture of experimentation and continuous learning? I mean, there are some real questions coming from that. I mean, I think we heard all sorts of answers. I mean, setting up centers of excellence. The phrase tiger teams occurred up in many.
Tiger team's a great answer for almost any problem.
It is some sort of agile, scrum, whatever the buzzwords are. They are coming back because I think there is a sense that organizations are having to evolve their frameworks, their skill base and their capability base. But there's no obvious playbook here to lean on. I mean, I think that's the other thing. What I heard from marketing officers in particular is just the importance right now of peer and partner communities, whether it's CMO forums, peer groups, consulting partners, agency partners. There's a lot of learning by doing or listening from others.
But this is a giant learn as we go runway for marketers, but also in the study, I think you asked, are some elements of marketing getting ignored or less attention? And one of the things that came out, I think, was, the whole brand trust thing is maybe not as heavy as it used to be, or at least I think that's what I read. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, no, I think you are. I mean, this was public news, so I'm not telling you anything you haven't seen, but already, we are seeing some pushback against AI first advertising. I think it was last year there was a report that it's actually in Europe. I think McDonald's in Netherlands had launched an AI generated Christmas or seasonal ad that had a lot of pushback, and because of the backlash, that ad was removed from YouTube within days. I mean, there's no doubt that there's some real concerns around brand trust. I mean, there is a sense that privacy, security, inclusivity, for example, will remain really important. And I think there's a real concern that not enough attention is being paid to some of these areas in this rush to adopt AI. And there are going to be some second order consequences. The risk of AI generated content which either mishandles issues, for example, around disability, diversity, or inclusion. I mean, I think there's some real concern that human oversight and human creativity, if it gets sacrificed at the altar of AI, there's going to be some real pushbacks and consequences in this rush to AI.
Well, and we had a guest, Tom Goodwin, on who basically said, look, if everyone's using AI by definition is the norm, and your job is to have an exceptional business. So if you're just doing AI, you're just doing the norm.
Right. Yep. I think that's right.
So other than buckle up for a wild ride, what should our listeners take away from these studies? Things they should do at work, things they should do for their career, things they should be thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, look, some of them remain a little bit perennial, but what I am encouraging people to do is just be prepared, because there's a question I will now ask in interviews. I mean, I will just actually ask people, I'm just curious, how do you use AI in your own personal life? Or what case studies do you have about how AI is impacting you at work? In other words, what I'm suggesting to people is that by prepare for the future here and build your own, if you like, sort of proof of value portfolio. How and where, what are the use cases you are getting out of AI, either on a personal or professional level? I really don't care. But help me understand that you are in the flow here, that you understand what is going on, you have a sense of the direction, and you can respond and leverage these new tools, and show me how you do it on a personal level. So I think there's just a little bit of personal preparation that goes on there. But I think there is a sense now, perhaps more so than ever, around constant learning, whether it's, dare I say, Mike, listening to podcasts like this, newsletters, courses.
You can say content, it as much as you want, Richard.
Vendor sessions, conferences. I mean, there is a sense of, how do you keep current? How do you keep learning? And, this sense of agility, I think, is going to be even more acute now over the next 2 years.
So I hear you saying, since there is no roadmap, and since everyone's kind of making it up as they go, you got to be in the flow wherever the flow is. And that means the flow will not come to you. You have to go to this flow. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it reminds me of, when I really first started thinking about the impact this topic of AI was going to have on leadership. I did myself an interview. You might know him, a guy called Vikrant Batra, the former chief marketing officer of HP. And he had this phrase. He says, look, I'm beginning to see people, I put them into sort of two categories around AI. They're either ostriches or they're wolves. The ostriches are the folks that have their head in the sand. The wolves are at the front of the pack, chasing the prey, figuring out, the direction of the hunt. And, there's a sense of, he said, look, honestly, there's way more ostriches out there than there are wolves. Go be a wolf.
Well, and I think the other thing is, in this category, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the things that used to able to be an ostrich is you could catch up. And in this case, I hear you saying, if you're an ostrich, when you decide you want to be a wolf, it's probably too late for you.
Well, yeah, and look, particularly, I'm going to lean on the results of this survey that says, look, there are, whether you like it or not, if you are sitting in a large, let's call it a Fortune S&P 500 business, just know your boss has been given a significant cost reduction target that he or she has to fulfill over the next 1 to 2 years. And I've sort of newsflash here, there's sometimes one only easy way to fulfill that cost target, and don't be on the wrong end of it.
Well, and that's, if there's a lot less jobs, you're always looking for the variable to be the one that stays versus the one that goes. And I hear you saying you have a lot of questions that you can determine if I'm a wolf or an ostrich.
That's
right. All right. I think that's a great way to get to our last question. Practical advice. You know the last question, you're a pro.
I do.
Practical advice and or funny story you would like to share with our listeners. Funny story you can tell on the air. You could take one or both, but you must take at least one. So knock yourself out.
So it's more of a practical one. And again, I'm going to, not to toot our horn on this AI survey, but one of the most interesting responses was how one chief marketing officer told us how they were treating an AI agent. There are some businesses that are treating AI agents just as if they were human new hires. So in other words, it needed onboarding, it needed data access, it needed a style guide, it needed a supervisor. They were actually writing a job description for an AI agent and almost treating it like a human now. And so this is a mindset shift, but that was perhaps one of the more practical stories I'm hearing around how CMOs are treating AI agents like humans.
I realize I'm using a lot of verbals with mine, and I yelled at it the other day. I'm like, why do I have to keep repeating this? And it said, you're right, you shouldn't have to. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. Okay, I think that's a great end. If you have any more practical advice you want to throw out there before we close, we're open.
I'm good.
All right. Thank you, Richard. And thanks to everyone for listening to CMO Confidential. New shows drop every Tuesday, and you can find our entire 160 show catalog on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, which include Colonel Mustard in the Study with the Job Spec, How Poor Design Shortens CMO Lifespans, Marketing at Meta, The View from the Eye of the Storm, Why Can't, and Richard's earlier shows, 2 of which are Dissecting Comp, A Primer on Pay, and It Was the Best of Times, It Was the Worst of Times, A Marketing Perspective. Hey, all you marketers, stay safe out there. This is Mike Linton signing off for CMO Confidential. When is the last time you researched something on a website? If you're like most people, AI did that work for you. And that raises a question. If AI is doing the work, what is your website really for? This behavioral shift means AI bots are becoming your most important new visitors, a challenge our sponsor Scrunch is taking head on. Scrunch is the customer experience platform that helps you understand how AI agents experience your site, when and why they show up, and what's blocking them from being retrieved, trusted, or recommended. Scrunch shows you the content and citation gaps and technical blockers and helps you fix them. So your brand shows up when consumers start with AI, because your most important site visitor might not be a human. For our listeners, Scrunch is providing a free website audit that uncovers how AI sees your site and how you're showing up in AI versus the competition. Run your site through it at scrunch.com/CMO.